Hey everybody, Pete Erickson here. Welcome back to Voice Global. This is part of our Fireside chat series, and I am thrilled to announce our next guest. His name is Mark Jamison. Mark is the global head of innovation and design at Visa. Mark, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's great to see you, Pete.
Yeah, it's good to see you as well. You know, it's a bummer though, because last time we saw each other was in person in San Francisco. And I have to say, that was my last business trip before the lockdown started back in February. Hard to believe what's happened since then.
Yeah. For those who don't know, at Visa, at our headquarters in San Francisco, we run an expert speaker series, and we bring in thought leaders from all different aspects of business. And so we brought in Pete to drop some knowledge on what he knows about this space, and it was a huge hit with all of our staff there at our headquarters. So thanks for doing that, Pete.
Well, thank you, Mark. I I really enjoyed it. So let's talk a little bit about you. Give us a little bit of your background and how you ended up at Visa.
Yeah. Well, my running joke, people who work with me laugh because I always start off saying I've got the best job at the company. And I really believe that. So Visa, as you may or may not know, is the world's largest payment network. And so we really enable commerce in all of its forms across 200 plus countries around the world. We process about $12 trillion of payment volume. The only number that's bigger is probably the US debt. So because of that, we get to see all these interesting things happening around the world. And I happen to run our network of innovation centers, and we have 12 of those around the world in great locations like London, Beijing, Singapore, Sao Paulo, San Francisco. And so we get to see the trends that are happening in commerce around the world. And we do new product development and exploration. And it's just a really cool job. But Pete and I actually met when I was working on the East Coast for Capital One. And I remember we met I actually used a metaphor from Broadway, a song that actually won an Academy Award for best song back in the 70s. It was tell them what they want and how they want it and give it to them just that way. And I use that as a metaphor for how to do user experience design in the mobile world.
Right.
Yep.
Well, you know what? It's funny. I'll take us back a little bit. I remember when I met you, the Capital One Labs was just being constructed. In fact, it was a construction site, required hard hats to even go
That's
through
right.
it. And we looked at that, and this is, I think, 2013. If my memory serves me correct, is when that opened. And we planned for when it was eventually done, how we could open it up to the developer community. It was a very exciting time. And you were on the cutting edge of turning a bank into a technology company.
Yeah, I think that the banking industry was slower than some other industries to really adopt a digital first mindset. And Capital One was a leader in the space. And so it was a really fun time as everything was just exploding, particularly in the mobile space back then.
Well, yeah. And that transformation really set the stage for you then to go on, do some other interesting things before your current role at Visa. But just suffice to say,
are you saying I can't hold a job?
No.
Okay.
I would say that you're good at climbing the ladder of ascension when it comes to innovation and design, and you're at the top now. So good for you.
Yeah, thanks. I was worried there for a second that I was being interviewed by my mother. Okay, great.
But
I do think in this space, like if you're not constantly curious and hungry and want to learn and explore about the things that are emerging, like you'll get stale really fast.
Absolutely. I think that's what it's all about. I mean, look, I've been with the same company for 11 years only because I own it, but it's really been about 10 different companies. So I've really had a new job about every year and a half, really. Yeah. And here we are, now we're producing virtual conferences. We have a talk show. I mean, it's crazy. I want to know a little bit about how your life and job has changed in the last 3 months at Visa, now that you're not going into that beautiful office in the Embarcadero or visiting those other amazing places around the world. How have things changed for you?
Wow. Just like everyone, it's been a really radical change. The interesting thing, since you've been to our headquarters and seen the whole infrastructure that we've set up around new product exploration, human-centered design, is a lot of our role was being evangelists for change in the industry. And we had clients from all over the world who'd come to our headquarters, we'd host them, and we had content we'd talk through and prototypes we'd share. And now there is no physical environment that people will come to. And you would think that all the juice would be gone. And what we found is, it's fascinating, the opposite has happened. Basically, that every big merchant in the world, every big issuer of payment credentials, they were somewhere on a digital transformation journey. And this thing hit. And now, like, there is no choice. Like, you have to accelerate or you won't survive. And so we've actually gotten a huge amount of demand from clients for help with their digital transformation. How do you do omni-channel commerce? How do you authenticate people when you won't see them in person? And so we're actually busier than ever. It's just all over video.
Yeah. And I think that, when it comes to our space, right, the voice space, it is no longer a nice to have. We are now in the must have category for a lot of folks, contactless
That's right.
Interaction. And that's gonna go across a number of things, whether it's, biometric authentication, voice authentication, you name it. You're bringing stuff up about Visa. I think a lot of people don't really know the company that well, right? Because they know Visa as a credit card company, and you mentioned, the trillions of transactions. Tell us a little bit more about the organization, just to let us know more about, who is Visa?
Yeah, I'll keep this tight. So Visa, I think, is one of a great kept secret, perhaps, in business. It went public in 2008, so it's not a particularly old company. And it is the largest payments company in the world by any metric. So, and really, I think many people think that it's a company that issues credit cards. We don't. Your bank issues the credit card. They're the ones who underwrite the credit. We're just the payment, the rails that payment gets authorized over. We make sure the funds get transferred between the parties in the right way. So we really are we're a technology platform where we write standards and rules and make sure that everyone in the commerce ecosystem plays by those same rules. And the benefit of that is then you get instant operability everywhere in the world.
Right.
Meaning you can take your payment credential to Japan, you can go to Brazil, and it all just works. You don't have to think about it. And so at today's market, we're probably a $415 billion market cap company, which I think puts us as maybe 7th or 8th most valuable company by market cap in the world.
Right.
And we're growing at a nice pace because our competitor is cash. And so we are taking cash, which is dirty and carries germs.
Right.
And by the way, it has risks of theft or loss or all sorts of things. In the world, what's happened because of COVID is that a lot of those secular trends towards digital payments are being accelerated.
You mentioned cash. I think one of the things I realized is I have not spent cash money in well over 3 months. It's probably the longest I've ever gone without spending cash money since I was probably 7 or 8 years old. Since I first started handling money myself, spending my allowance at the 5 and dime store on candy. And it just was like, wow, it just feels so foreign, but it's where we are,
That's right.
So
by the way, Pete, you're not alone in that. Just a couple of weeks ago, our global head of product penned an article that got a fair amount of press, and it said the 6 truths of the new reality. And I won't go through all 6 of them. But one of them was exactly what you described, which is that consumers now care about how they pay. And what they care about is health and safety. And even the World Health Organization came out and said that cash carries germs. And where possible, you should not pay with cash. You should find a digital way to pay. And so that's really, I think the consumer mindset has changed to say, I want to do tap to pay, where I'm not touching anything. Or, use e-commerce where I'm just inputting my payment credentials and it all just happens.
Right. There's I won't name names, but there's an endearing shop near us that we like to frequent, and they're a cash only shop. This is, and we don't know what's happened since, COVID, but we know that can't happen anymore. Like these, some of these things that are sort of endearing and nice are going to have to change just from a sheer, health and safety standpoint.
That's right. And consumers will force that to happen, even if the merchant doesn't necessarily want it to.
So you can't go into some of those other truths of that 6?
I'm happy to give you the headline. So number one, it won't be surprising, but it's like we really have the global data set that shows actually the words I think Jack, and when he wrote this, said was, there's a massive switch from in-person payments to digital payments.
Right.
And consumers are shopping digital first.
Yes.
And so obviously it's in categories that traditionally have been slow to do that. So things like groceries, or it's a sort of household staples, or even restaurants.
Right.
Many restaurants were perhaps cash only or cash heavy. And now in order to do delivery pickup, you're going to pay. So there's this massive shift.
Yeah.
Number two is that businesses have had to move at the speed of light to ramp up their digital game. So there are big players, let's say Walmart or Target, and they've been investing against this omni-channel commerce thing for a while, and they're in good shape, and their numbers show it, and they've said that publicly. But particularly smaller businesses, or even some big businesses that chose not to invest against their digital capabilities. Can you order online and pick up at the store? Can you order online and have it delivered? Does it work over your mobile device really easily? Are you able to have a digital payment credential on file that makes the whole thing seamless? The companies that have invested against that are winning.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is that a lot of the smaller businesses hadn't really had to do that in the past, but now they're moving onto platforms like Shopify, which is a really nice solution, and it's really accelerating that whole transition.
Yeah, talk about a business that was at the right place at the right time.
That's right. They're now the highest market cap company in Canada.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah. I just I saw the numbers, and it was quite staggering.
It's shocking.
Shocking. There are a lot of businesses like that. We've seen, obviously the Zoom market cap gets talked about a lot.
Right.
And I think that, we notice it in our own family as well, right? So I did pick up lunch for the family today. Once in a while we're ordering in. But the whole transaction's done. You go and basically almost contactless pickup. You just, you have hardly any contact. You pick it up and you go. Yeah. It's the transactions become much less friction. And I think that's, something that we're all getting used to now, and that's probably not going to change. Grocery shopping, now we're using, Instacart and ordering it online, and kind of getting used to the idea that, well, this is kind of nice.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and it opens up other business opportunities for folks out there in the market that may be displaced, and they're opening other opportunities. Well, you may not be able to go into this, but I know that Visa is a huge sponsor of the Olympics, and the reason I know that is because I've been in your office and I've seen those beautiful displays and the athletes, and I think I even met an Olympic athlete at your offices.
I'm sure you did. Yep.
So the Olympics have been moved to 2021. Is that impacting you in your role at Visa?
Yeah. The Olympics is a very special movement. They refer to it as the Olympics movement, and Visa has been what's called a top sponsor. TOP is an acronym for the Olympic program. So there's a very small set of companies, global companies, that participate at that level. And we are the longest running top sponsor, over 30 years. So it's really deeply embedded in our brand and how we think about it. And so it's a big deal for us as a company that it got moved. And how it relates particularly to the function that I lead is we have if you think of the Olympics as a global platform that the entire world stops for a few weeks to watch what's happening. It's a place where we can debut new technologies, new experiences, new ways that commerce will play out. And so we had some really neat things like around facial payments and biometrics that we're going to roll out in the Olympic Village, so the athletes could use it, could literally pay with their face.
Right.
Which in one sense isn't rocket science. Like, it exists in some places around the world. It's less a technical problem than it is a privacy, making sure you've architected it for privacy, and also you've built the experience in a way that consumers will understand, that they'll trust, and that they'll use.
Right.
And so now that'll be delayed a little bit, and we'll find other venues where we can test out some of that tech that we've built and we're really excited about. So that's really the biggest effect. Is some things we were hoping to launch on a grander stage. We'll have to find another stage or delay it for 8 or 9 months.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was a huge fan of the Olympics. Obviously, was really looking forward to them, but totally understand why they had to push. So many things have had to push. Now that we're not being able to connect in person. I mean, I had no idea that CES was the last live event that I would be doing. We did voice at CES.
Right, right.
And who knew, right? We were supposed to go then to Mobile World Congress, that canceled, then South by Southwest, that canceled. Then our next stop was Can Digital, and then we had kind of this year planned, which would culminate in our live summit in the fall. But Olympics aside, what's happened to us is not unique. It's happening to everybody out there. How are you thinking about the way that you can connect with people now? In your orbit?
Yeah. Well, let me answer it this way, which might be a little different than the way you intend it. So, of course, correct me if this isn't helpful. But when this crisis hit, every individual, every company, governments, like we all had to react and adapt to it. And in the mostly the business space, like our big merchants and issuers, partners, they all had, they were forced with this new reality. And so I'm going to make up this number, but it's sort of directionally correct. There's about 70% that go, oh, we're like, this is terrible. We're really scared. And we're going to just cut everything back, like batten down the hatches.
Yeah.
And I think that's, that is actually evolutionary psychology would say that's a rational response.
Right.
But, if you look historically, the companies that have won are ones that see that the world has changed and they build for where the world is now going.
Yeah.
And so we have a small set of what we often refer to as our ambitious clients. And they go, yeah, of course, we're going to be responsible. We're going to cut where we can. Yeah. But at the same time, we're also going to reprioritize. We're not going to just say our list of 100 things is now 65 things. They're going to say our list is now 65. But in that 65, here's 15 that we're going to overinvest in and accelerate because those are the things that are going to help us win in this new world.
Right.
And so what we found is that our ability to engage with our clients on new product development, on accelerating their digital roadmap, on all sorts of activities has really escalated. And for what we do, it's actually more fun because it sort of separates the wheat from the chaff. Like now the work we're doing is existential to these companies, and we're getting senior executive engagement and really going to make some things happen.
Well, it's great to hear. I think that, we have to innovate through this, right? We have to rely on our human instincts of intuition and emotion and design to get through this. And it's great to hear about those kinds of initiatives, and in an area that's really important, in an area that is driving the economy. Commerce is what drives the economy. Mark, let's talk a little bit about the voice tech space and how that's played a role for you in your role as the head of product and design at Visa. Yeah.
So let me answer it in the way we think about it is it is a subset of biometrics, and there are 5 biometric standards that we have written and support throughout our ecosystem. And it's ones you would know. It'd be retinal scan, fingerprint, palm print, voice, and facial recognition. And each have different use cases. And we've done some really interesting exploration, particularly around facial recognition and voice. And it's interesting. Facial recognition, I think, gets a lot more. It seems to get a lot more press because it's more controversial, right? There's a privacy issues. There's a lot of issues that go along with it. But there are solutions and some pretty neat stuff you can do. And then in voice, I actually think that tech has been hardened for a while longer, and it doesn't seem to have a lot of the baggage that the facial recognition does. And it's actually been really fascinating. As you know, Pete, we have these human-centered design teams that rapidly explore areas. And so one of the things that we do primary research. We go and find real humans and to find out how they would use the technology, because tech is half of it, but actually humans are unpredictable, and there's things that we want to do or don't want to do, and you really have to learn your way into what works in the experience. And at the end of the exploration, we always do a little 60-second, 120-second video that captures the key learnings of what we found. And we did one on what we called audible authentication, because voice can be used both to identify you and authenticate you as a person, which is actually a pretty tough problem in our industry to get that accurate. And that's a lot of what Visa does. And then also that can then be paid or connected to a payment credential. So those can be separated, but one of the cool things is you can combine those, and it makes the whole thing much more seamless. But anyway, in this 2-minute video, I was just watching it last night, and we did it, I don't know, 6 months ago to wrap up that phase of the research. And one of the things that we had in there was, one of the insights was, there's a segment of customers that didn't want to touch, they were kind of germaphobes, and they didn't want to touch a dirty point of sale terminal. So even if they tap their card, if it's a debit card, you still have to enter in a PIN, right? So you're touching some screen that hundreds of people touch. And that actually came out in the research. So we put it in this video. And as we showed it to clients as they came to visit or with our executive team, it was interesting how many people go, well, that's kind of dumb. Like, really? Like, your insight is that people don't want to touch dirty terminals? Like, surely there's more. And so, like, and now we're sitting here today going, wow, like, that thing was spot on. And luckily we now understand this insight that if we're going to build, contactless or tap to pay is an element, but it's not touchless, right? You still, in the experience, have to have to touch things. And so, the future of this world likely is going to be focused on hygiene and health and safety. And so we have to create solutions that are truly touchless.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing it across the industry. There has been, I guess the way to put it is, it is no longer a nice to have. We are kind of in the must have era of voice technology and other biometrics that go with voice. Is there anything you could share with regards to working with assistants or working outside of the assistant ecosystem on voice?
Well, we're a standards company, and so we don't build for any one given manufacturer of the tech. And so when you came through, you probably saw demos where we would just say things like, "Hey, assistant, could you do this?" And here's what we found. And when I tell you this, it'll be obvious, but it's not obvious before I tell you it. It's kind of like, don't think of a rainbow, right? Okay, there it is. Was the common sense reaction when you do design is, hey, the fewer clicks, the better. The less friction, the better. You need to make this thing as streamlined as possible. Generally true. Yeah. With voice, what we found was we sort of focused on, let's call it everyday spending, as opposed to, hey, when's my first meeting, or what are the directions to this place, or set a timer for 20 minutes, like the use cases that are most popular commonly with voice. And what we found is we actually did real world testing of commerce for everyday shopping. We tested it in 3 environments. We tested it, we set up pseudo environments of like people in their living room, people in a changing room of a retailer for clothing, and then also in their car. We think those are 3 unique and fundamentally different use cases where people will use voice, and the context is different in each one of those. And what we found is that because voice doesn't have an interface, like there's no learning curve, you don't learn it, or there's no obvious way to see like what's the menu of choices, that the humans liked it when you created road bumps and affirmation and use personality to do that. And so, for example, in the prototype app that we built, if you remember back when you probably first did like fingerprinting, like you had to hold your thumb or your finger in a bunch of different directions so that it gets a full picture from different angles in the secure element on the device. Well, the same thing was true with voice. So we would say, okay, this is going to be a way for you to authenticate you uniquely and securely. So, read these phrases, say these words, say it loudly, say it softly. And so they were familiar with that, but we could uniquely identify them. And then we would ask them things like, what's your favorite song? Oh, my song is Give It Away Now by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm dating myself, but I do love that song. Yes. And so Mark, from now on, anytime you choose to use your voice to buy something, we're going to play a little snippet of that song. So you'll know that we uniquely authenticated you, and we're going to use the payment credential you have on file securely that only works for you. And so what we found was in the process of all of those, instead of making it super easy, we would stop and say, oh, hey, Mark, can you say this phrase? Yep, I say the phrase. Okay, now we know it's you. Do you want to use this payment credential that you have on file? You know, it's the Visa such and such, right? And people welcomed, because absent that, they were kind of wondering, like, I don't know, did they know it was me or was it my spouse? And we're like, which one of my cards did it use? And so I was creating these roadblocks, and even these little moments of delight that were personalized, like the song. In another video that we did capturing it, we had these real humans, and when their favorite song would come on, they'd be in this pseudo dressing room, and they'd start dancing.
Right.
And they're in their car and they start dancing. So instead of it being this sort of opaque process that they were unsure how it would work, it became this moment of joy that now they would choose to use this form, that their voice, to authenticate themselves and to pay for a commerce transaction without ever touching anything.
That is fascinating. I have to tell you, like, the idea that inviting friction into the voice experience actually improved it in certain circumstances, especially when it comes to authenticity and experience. I mean, I do love the idea that my experience, maybe while I was waiting for a transaction to process, my favorite song came on, and we'd be kind of like, well, that's pretty cool, you know.
And what would your favorite song be, Pete?
Oh gosh,
what snippet should we play for you?
I think New Year's Day by U2.
Nice.
Dating Myself, that was an 80s song.
That was off their original album. Yeah.
That was that was in like that was like their 1981 release or something like that. But anyway, I'm 80s kid, But well, Mark, this has been it's been a fascinating conversation. I would love to know, as we wrap up here, what advice would you give to somebody that may be watching this interview that's new to the industry? Maybe new to voice tech, or you can include fintech in that if you want. But what advice would you give to somebody who's watching this interview that maybe just trying to break in?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. First is the tech is more hardened than you think, meaning it's democratized. You don't have to be some hardcore engineer to actually build skills. Like, it's pretty simple. And so, like, don't be afraid. Go just get your hands dirty in the space. And then the way you get your hands dirty is, again, it's not really a technical problem first and foremost. It's a human problem. Mm-hmm. So whatever it is you're trying to solve, be really clear. Like, write your hypothesis that says, I believe that people will use this in this way to do this thing. Mm-hmm. And then test it with real people. Like, go out and find 5 people and just test it. And by the way, you're always wrong. So just approach it with some humility. But because you started with a hypothesis and you learn what's true, you're really well positioned then to build a product or service or capability that can then really meet some unmet human need or some problems that they have. So just really take a human-centered approach, and you'll always be grateful you did that.
That is great advice. I think you'll always be wrong. I think the number one thing I've always learned is the surprise and delight I get with how people end up using a product that I'm putting out there that I didn't see. And I think that is just so important. My guest for this Fireside Chat has been Mark Jamison. Mark is the global head of product and design, innovation and product design at Visa. Mark, good luck as we move through this pandemic. I'm not sure when we're going to be able to see each other again, but I really look forward to that time. In the meantime, let's stay in touch. And thanks again for being a part of Voice Global.
Yeah, we'll absolutely stay in touch, Pete. And thank you for including us in this, and stay safe. It's great to see you.
Cheers.